Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy serves on the Foreign Relations Committee and joins me now and has been a leading voice on Ukraine, with multiple trips there over these years. Senator, thank you very much. I want to start with an update to what we were just discussing with Deputy Secretary Sherman, because when we interviewed her about a half hour ago, the Moscow embassy had not tweeted that no acknowledgement that they were warned by the Russians, as the Russian Foreign Ministry has said, that this was the first step towards severing relations over the president calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal. But the embassy tweeted that Ambassador Sullivan complained to the Russians about the lack of consular access to detainees, especially to those who are in detention. And that means clearly Brittany Griner. So that is the state of play on that. Your reaction to this whole dispute over their angry response to the president calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
Well, Vladimir Putin is in a very dangerous corner right now. Prior to this invasion, many of us worried that Putin had been secluded in his billion-dollar dacha in Sochi, getting no advice or very bad advice, being told that he was going to be greeted as a liberator if he ran an army into Ukraine, into Kyiv. I think he ultimately was, in fact, getting bad advice or no advice because everything has gone wrong since he commenced this invasion. And he is being left with very few good options at this point. So I worry he's not making sound decisions today, as he didn't make a sound decision when he decided to invade. It would not be a sound decision to break off diplomatic relations with the United States. Whether we like it or not, we have to have the ability to communicate. Our two nations remain the two most significant nuclear superpowers, and we need to have a dialogue to make sure that this conflict in Ukraine doesn't escalate into a global nuclear standoff. Let's see what happens over the course of the next few days. John Sullivan is a very capable diplomat, and we'll hope that ultimately cooler heads prevail and we can keep our embassies open so that we can at least have a modicum of deconfliction dialogue to make sure that things don't get even worse than they already are in Ukraine.
And focusing on the whole issue of the atrocities, the obvious war crimes that we're seeing every day. Here is Secretary of State earlier this morning at the Holocaust Museum, where he was declaring that the action by the junta in Burma or Myanmar 5 years ago was genocide against the Muslim Rohingya, the minority Muslim Rohingya. It took 5 years to reach that determination. This is what he had to say about Ukraine.
As we meet, the Russian government continues to wage its unprovoked, brutal war on Ukraine. Each day brings more harrowing attacks, more innocent men, women, and children killed. The Kremlin has tried to justify this war by falsely claiming that it's intervening to stop genocide, abusing the term that we reserve for the gravest atrocities, disrespecting every victim of this heinous crime.
The administration has been slow, say critics, to declare that Putin is a war criminal. 39 other states, other nations already made that determination. Not a legal determination, but said it very clearly. Why does it take the United States so long to go through this process, especially now with all the real-time visual evidence?
Well, President Biden and Secretary Blinken have been very clear about their belief that Vladimir Putin has committed war crimes. I understand that this is ultimately a legal standard.
Just in the last few days, with all due respect, Senator, just since Thursday and Friday, there were a lot of very careful statements, legalistic statements up until then.
Well, it is a legal standard, ultimately. I mean, to convict an individual of war crimes, you need a body of evidence. And what I heard the administration saying prior to late last week is that they were putting together that body of evidence so that they could make an unassailable case that war crimes had been committed. But, I mean, this is an open and shut case at this point. I mean, Putin has changed strategies. He no longer believes that he can take Kyiv through a conventional military invasion. And so now he has decided to pursue a different path. He is going to move towards a genocidal strategy in which he attacks and kills as many Ukrainian civilians as possible so as to bring Zelensky to the negotiating table simply to stop that slaughter of innocents. That is unconscionable. It will ultimately cause the United States to get more deeply involved in this war to stop that brutality. And in my mind, and now I believe in the president's mind, there's no question that this constitutes war crimes.
What should the U.S. do if Putin were to use chemical weapons against the people of Ukraine?
I think we need to make it clear to Putin that as his targeting of civilians increases, so will our commitment to Ukraine's defense. I don't know that it makes sense right now to telegraph to Putin exactly what those steps will be, but we want to make clear that our involvement in the war is proportional to Putin's tactics. And if he starts using chemical weapons, then we are going to have to consider a range of options at our disposal. That ultimately is President Biden's decision, but I think he will have a willing Congress if chemical weapons are used, and he requests from Congress authority to get more deeply involved in this conflict to save lives.
And the administration is saying that they have no confirmation or denial about the use of a hypersonic weapon. What could possibly be the reason for using a hypersonic weapon for relatively short range against a building?
Yeah, there's absolutely no justification for it. And I do think people, have to do a little bit more study of what technically qualifies as hypersonic. These are likely existing missiles that are just being dropped from a plane rather than fired from the ground. That's an innovation, but frankly, not a game-changing innovation. I think Russia is going to try to use all sorts of new means and mechanisms over the next few weeks to try to scare the Ukrainians to the negotiating table because they no longer have a clear path to take major cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv. So what you're seeing is a rapid, real-time reorientation of Russian strategy because the strategy they had been building for months prior to the invasion failed. It failed. And so an incredibly weak Russia is trying to recalibrate, and these sort of show-off moves, like firing missiles from planes rather than from the ground, is designed to try to change minds in Kyiv to try to scare the Zelensky government. It doesn't seem to be having that effect at all.
Senator Murphy, thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.